I was still bleeding when she said it, still shaking from the hours of labor, still lying in that hospital bed, half conscious, ribs aching, everything raw. I was barely able to sit upright, but I heard every word. Margot turned to the nurse and said, "Don't let her hold the baby. She's not even family." Just like that, cold, final, like I was a stranger, and I just sat there, silent, frozen, humiliated. I wanted to speak. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and say, "That's my baby. I gave birth to her. I carried her for 9 months. I fought for her through every contraction, through every complication." But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I'd never felt so small. The nurse looked between us, confused, unsure. Her hands trembled as she tried to decide what to do, and I just stared at Margot, my husband's mother, who had always seen me as less than worthy, less than a wife, less than a mother. The woman who never wanted me in her family was now trying to erase me from my daughter's life, and it was working. No one in that room spoke up for me. No one corrected her. And the baby, my baby, was in her arms. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. I thought maybe I was losing too much blood. Maybe I'd pass out and wake up to find that this whole nightmare was over. But it wasn't. It was just getting started. She looked at me once, just once, and said, "You'll get your turn later." Like I was just some visitor who'd wandered in off the street. Not a mother, not her son's wife, not a human being. That moment should have been one of the happiest of my life. I should have been cradling my daughter, whispering her name, memorizing the shape of her fingers. Instead, I was being erased, rewritten out of my own story. And then, just when I thought no one would speak, the door opened. The doctor walked in, Dr. Henderson. I'd seen him during the worst moments of my labor. He was calm, focused, and kind, the kind of person you trust without even thinking about it. He looked around the room, took one look at me, and then at Margot. "What's going on here?" he asked. The nurse tried to explain, stumbling through her words, unsure how to handle the situation. And then he turned to me. His voice was steady and sure. "Actually," he said, "this baby wouldn't be here if it weren't for her." He walked over and handed me something. It was a form, a legal document. "Read who signed the birth certificate," he said. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The weight of every insult, every dismissal, every time I'd stayed silent just to keep the peace, it all cracked open. Because I wasn't invisible. I wasn't irrelevant. I was the mother. I had proof in my hands. I looked at Margot. She didn't say a word, and for the first time since I'd arrived at that hospital, I realized I wasn't going to let anyone take this from me. Not my name, not my baby, not one more second. When I found out I was pregnant, I cried on the bathroom floor with the test still in my hand. They weren't sad tears. They weren't exactly happy ones either. They were the kind of tears that come from realizing everything is about to change, and you have no idea if you're ready. Tyler, my husband, took it better than I did. He knelt beside me, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "We've got this." And in that moment, I believed him. I believed in us. We had been married for 2 years. We met in college. He was studying engineering. I was finishing my degree in early childhood education. He made me feel safe, steady, seen. And even though his family never really welcomed me in, I thought I could live with that. I thought love would be enough. His mother, Margot, made her feelings clear from the beginning. She never raised her voice or said anything openly cruel. She didn't have to. Her disapproval was quiet, constant, and crushing. When I spoke, she looked at her phone. When I cooked, she wasn't hungry. At our wedding, she told people Tyler had rushed into things, that I wasn't really his type, that I'd gotten lucky. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was marrying Tyler, not his mother. But when I got pregnant, things shifted. Tyler was excited, and that seemed to thaw Margot. For a moment. She bought baby clothes. She picked out names. She smiled in a way I hadn't seen before. I almost let myself believe we were finally becoming a family, but something in me knew to stay cautious. There was always a line I wasn't allowed to cross, a seat I hadn't truly earned at her table. My pregnancy wasn't easy. At 12 weeks, I was put on bed rest for 2 weeks due to early contractions. At 24 weeks, I was diagnosed with preeclampsia. I was in and out of the hospital, constantly monitored, always worried. Tyler tried to be present, but work kept pulling him away. And every time he had to leave, Margot stepped in. Not gently, not kindly. She arrived with orders, opinions, and that same cold smile that made me feel like a stranger in my own life. When I went into labor, it was 3 weeks early. Tyler was out of state visiting his uncle, who'd taken a sudden turn for the worse. He was supposed to be gone for 2 days. It turned into 5. Margot insisted on staying with me. She said she didn't want me to be alone, but it felt more like she didn't want to leave me unsupervised. Tyler had given her temporary medical power of attorney, just in case. It was meant to protect me, but she used it to control everything. What room I stayed in, what doctor I saw, when I could have visitors. The labor was brutal. 18 hours, 2 failed epidurals. At one point, the baby's heart rate dropped, and I had to be given oxygen. I remember the mask being pushed onto my face and a nurse saying, "We might have to make a decision soon." I was alone in a room full of people, and the only person who spoke to me like I mattered was a young nurse named Angela. She wiped my forehead and whispered, "Doing amazing." It was the first kind thing anyone had said to me in hours. Eventually, I gave birth to a tiny, perfect baby girl. I didn't even get to hold her. They took her away for immediate care, and I was too weak to protest. I drifted in and out of sleep, exhausted and hollow. I kept asking for Tyler. He was still on his way. When I finally woke up in the recovery room, Margot was already there holding the baby. The nurse stood awkwardly beside her, looking unsure. I reached out with both arms and said, "Can I hold her?" And that's when Margot said the words that made everything inside me go still. "Don't let her hold the baby. She's not even family." I didn't understand how someone could be so cruel at a moment like that. I was her daughter-in-law. I was the mother of the child she was holding. I was the woman who had nearly died to bring that baby into the world. And yet somehow I was invisible again. But something inside me refused to break this time. I didn't know it yet, but this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a moment that would change everything. The nurse hesitated. Her hands were still covered in latex gloves, hovering over the baby. She looked from Margot to me, unsure of what to do. I could see the uncertainty in her eyes, the way she flinched when conflict entered the room. And I didn't blame her. Margot carried herself like someone who expected obedience, and she knew exactly how to get it. "I'm the grandmother," Margot said, "her next of kin, legally speaking. The baby needs to stay with me." I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. I reached for the cup of water by the bed and took a shaky sip. My body felt broken. My chest still burned from the oxygen mask. My arms felt like sandbags, but I had enough strength left to whisper, "My daughter." Margot didn't flinch, and no one's saying she isn't. "But Tyler isn't here, and with your condition earlier, you're not in the right state of mind. Let's wait until the doctors clear you, all right? We just want what's best for the baby." The nurse looked panicked. She glanced down at the chart in her hands, scanning it for answers she wouldn't find. She was young, maybe new, maybe unprepared for the politics of a family like ours. "Can I see some ID?" the nurse asked. Margot pulled a folder from her purse. She had it ready. Signed documents, emergency contacts, the temporary medical power of attorney Tyler had approved weeks earlier. At the time, it seemed responsible, necessary. I had even signed off on it, trusting that it was a precaution, not a weapon. She waved the papers like a badge of authority. "We're just following protocol," she said calmly. "She needs rest. The baby needs calm. Let's not turn this into something emotional." But it was emotional. It was deeply, painfully emotional. I had just gone through 18 hours of labor. I had given birth with no husband by my side, no family to hold my hand, just machines, pain, and strangers trying to keep both of us alive. And now, after all of that, the first arms to hold my child weren't mine. They were hers. I could hear Eliana's soft cries, muffled against Margot's shoulder. It felt like a piece of me had been taken, not just taken, stolen. I tried again. "Please, just for a minute. I need to hold her." Margot clutched the baby closer and turned slightly away, protecting Eliana as if I were a threat. "Let's not do this now," she said. "You're upset. You need to recover. The last thing you need is more stress." She wasn't loud. She didn't yell. Her tone was careful, measured, and dangerous. It was the kind of voice used by people who manipulate while pretending to care. And the worst part was, I knew she believed she was right. The nurse took a step back. "Maybe I should check with the attending." "No need," Margot said, her voice firm. "Everything is covered. I'll take care of her." I could feel my body trembling, not just from the labor, not just from blood loss, but from something deeper, rage and heartbreak living in the same space. I had never felt so powerless, so erased. The room blurred around me. My heart pounded in my ears. All I could think was, this is how it happens. This is how people are rewritten out of their own lives. One signature, one assumption, one person too weak to speak up. I wanted to scream. But instead, I lay back in the bed, staring at the ceiling tiles while Margot cooed at my baby, like she had every right to do so. I could hear her saying Eliana's name, testing it out, trying it on. She hadn't even liked the name when I picked it, said it was too dramatic. But now she was saying it like it belonged to her. My body may have been too weak to fight, but my mind was on fire. I knew that if someone didn't step in soon, I might lose this moment forever. The first hour, the first bond, the first recognition between mother and child, and still, no one in that room stood up for me. Until the door opened. The door opened with a quiet swish, and Dr. Cam Henderson stepped into the room. He wasn't loud. He didn't need to be. His presence had a way of filling the space. Calm, focused. The kind of doctor who made people stand straighter when he walked in. He had been there during the scariest part of my labor, when the baby's heartbeat dipped and panic threatened to take over. I remembered his voice in the chaos, steady, clear, cutting through everything. Now he paused just inside the room, eyes scanning from Margot, who was still holding my daughter, to me, lying weak in the hospital bed, silent and stunned. "What's going on here?" he asked. His tone wasn't sharp, but it was firm enough to command attention. The nurse, Angela, stepped forward, voice hesitant. "There's been a bit of confusion," she said. "The patient, Celine, has requested to hold the baby, but her mother-in-law is currently listed as the temporary medical contact. She asked us not to allow contact until further notice." "She's the mother," Angela added quickly, motioning toward me. "But with the paperwork, I just wasn't sure what to do." Dr. Henderson nodded slowly and turned to Margot. "Are you preventing the mother from seeing her newborn?" Margot straightened, her expression hard to read. "My son had to leave town unexpectedly. He left me in charge because there were complications, and Celine's health was unstable. She was heavily medicated during delivery, and we just want what's safest for the child." He looked at me. "Selina, how are you feeling?" I struggled to sit up straighter, ignoring the pain that shot through my side. "I'm exhausted, but I want to hold my daughter. Please, I haven't held her once since she was born." That was the first time I said it out loud. Not just the baby, not her. I said, my daughter. It came out clear and sharp. The truth always sounds stronger when it's been buried too long. Dr. Henderson didn't blink. He crossed the room and opened a folder he had tucked under one arm. "Celine," he said, flipping through the pages, "do you remember signing consent for the emergency procedure during labor?" "Yes." "You made the call for the fetal transfusion when we detected distress?" "Yes." "You approved the oxytocin drip and gave us authorization for surgical intervention if it became necessary?" "Yes, I was conscious the whole time." He closed the folder and looked at the nurse. Those were all valid and binding. She was alert, competent, and identified as the legal mother. There's no medical reason to withhold her child from her. Margot opened her mouth, but he didn't give her the chance. He reached into the folder again and pulled out a new sheet. "Celine," he said, "this is your daughter's birth certificate. Just came back from records. You want to read who signed it?" He walked it over to me and placed it gently in my lap. I looked down. My name was right there, in black ink. Selena Rivera. Mother. Tears welled up before I could stop them. Not because I was sad, not because I was broken, but because this was the first time since giving birth that I felt seen. I felt real. I felt like I mattered again. Dr. Henderson turned to Angela. "Would you please place the baby with her mother?" Angela didn't hesitate. She stepped toward Margot, who clutched the child tighter. "I'll need to take her now," Angela said quietly. "Doctor's orders." Margot stood frozen for a beat, then reluctantly passed Eliana into Angela's arms. No tantrum, no final word, just quiet surrender. When the nurse placed Eliana in my arms, I felt the world shift. Her body was so small, her skin warm, her scent unfamiliar but already unforgettable. Her tiny hand rested against my chest, right over my heart. She blinked up at me, her mouth twitching in a soft, sleepy motion, as if she recognized me. Dr. Henderson stood by the door, watching. Then he gave me a small nod. "I'm sorry no one stood up for you sooner," he said. I looked at him, holding my daughter like she was the only thing keeping me upright. "Thank you," I whispered, because he had given me more than a document. He had given me back my place, my voice, my motherhood. Eliana settled into my chest like she had always belonged there. Her tiny fingers curled instinctively against my hospital gown, skin warm and impossibly soft. Her breathing was light and rhythmic, and when she shifted slightly, I felt her heartbeat against mine, a perfect match, as if my body still remembered the sound of her from the inside. Margot said nothing. She stood rigid near the corner of the room, arms crossed, eyes glued to the floor. Her expression wasn't angry anymore. It was blank. She had lost her grip on the moment, and for the first time since I met her, she didn't know what to say. Angela remained beside me, gently adjusting the baby's blanket. She offered a soft smile and touched my arm in quiet solidarity. Dr. Henderson was still near the doorway, flipping through his folder again, double-checking the birth certificate and medical records, making sure everything was in order. "Celine," he said after a moment, "if you'd like, we can place a note in the file restricting non-parental access to the baby's room. It's your decision now." I nodded, not out of revenge, but because I had learned a hard truth in those last few hours. Silence isn't protection. It's permission. And I wasn't going to be silent anymore. "Yes," I said. "Please make that note." He gave a satisfied nod and made a note on his clipboard. Then he looked up at Margot. "You'll need to check with the front desk before visiting again. All future access will go through the mother." The mother, not the patient, not the wife, not the daughter-in-law. The mother. Margot's mouth tightened, but she didn't object. She simply turned, walked to the door, and left without another word. For a moment, the room was still. The quiet was different now. It didn't feel oppressive. It felt peaceful. Angela cleared her throat. "Would you like some privacy? I can draw the curtain." I looked at Eliana's face. She was asleep already, completely unaware of the war that had just been fought around her. "Yes, thank you," I said. Angela drew the curtain and dimmed the overhead lights. Then she left us alone for the first time since Eliana was born. I looked down at her, memorizing every detail, her delicate eyelashes, her button nose, her full lips. I traced the edge of her cheek with the back of my finger. She stirred slightly, then settled back into sleep. "I'm your mom," I whispered. "No one gets to change that." Tears slid down the sides of my face, but I didn't wipe them away. I let them fall. They weren't from pain. They were release. Relief. The weight I'd been carrying for 2 years, trying to earn a place in a family that never wanted me, was gone. I never should have had to fight this hard just to hold my own child. But in doing so, I found something I didn't expect. I found the part of myself I had kept quiet to keep the peace, the part that knew what I deserved and wasn't afraid to claim it anymore. Later, Tyler arrived. He came rushing into the room, eyes full of panic until he saw me holding Eliana. "I'm so sorry," he said, kneeling at my bedside. "I had no idea my mom would do any of that. I thought she was helping." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I looked at him and said, "She tried to take our daughter from me." "That's not helping. That's control." He nodded slowly, guilt in his eyes. "It won't happen again. I'll fix this." "No," I said gently. "We will fix this, but not for her, for us, for Eliana." He took my free hand and kissed it. Then he leaned over and touched his daughter's head for the first time. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Yes," I said, "she is." In that moment, we weren't just husband and wife. We were parents, partners, protectors. And as I held my daughter in that quiet hospital room, I knew this was only the beginning. She would grow up knowing that her mother never backed down, that her mother fought for her before she ever took her first breath, that she was loved, chosen, and protected, no matter who tried to rewrite the story. 3 weeks after we brought Eliana home, I stood at the edge of her crib just watching her sleep. The nursery was quiet, lit only by the soft glow of the nightlight. She had one arm flung across her face like she was blocking out the world. Tyler was asleep in the next room. He had taken the night shift the night before and left me a note on the fridge that just said, "You're stronger than you know." That morning in the hospital had changed everything. Not just because Margot had tried to take control, not just because Dr. Henderson had stepped in. It changed everything because it forced me to see exactly how much of myself I had been willing to give away in the name of keeping peace. I had been shrinking for years, quietly letting things go, laughing off the comments, nodding through the cold glances, believing that if I stayed soft, eventually I would be accepted. But motherhood doesn't leave room for shrinking. It demands strength, not the kind that yells or slams doors, the kind that says, "No more," and means it. Tyler and I had a long conversation when we got home. We sat on the couch after putting Eliana down for her nap, and I told him everything, not just what happened in the hospital, but how it had felt to be erased, how lonely the pregnancy had been, how much it hurt to be treated like a guest in my own life. He didn't defend his mother, he didn't make excuses, he listened. And when I was done, he said, "It's not going to be like that anymore." We made boundaries together, real ones. Margot would not be visiting without both our consent. She would not be making medical decisions. She would not be in the room unless invited. He called her that night. I didn't listen to the call, but I saw how heavy his shoulders were when he hung up. He didn't say much, just that she was shocked and upset. But he stood by what we agreed to. That meant more than anything. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. Not the kind where you stay quiet to avoid a fight. The kind where you no longer have to earn your place at your own table. Eliana doesn't know any of this yet. She doesn't know what happened in the hospital room or how close I came to missing the first moment we ever shared. But one day, she will. I'll tell her the truth. Not to make her choose sides, but to show her what it means to stand your ground when everything feels stacked against you. She'll know that being a mother isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about protecting the sacred bond between you and your child, even when no one else understands it, even when someone tries to rewrite it. She'll know that her name was whispered by me before it was ever printed on a birth certificate, that I loved her when she was just a heartbeat, that I carried her not just in my body, but in every fear, every hope, and every late-night prayer I whispered alone. The birth certificate hangs in a frame above her crib now. Not because I need proof of who I am, but because I want her to grow up seeing it. I want her to grow up knowing that her story started with a fight and that her mother never gave up. I've stopped trying to prove myself to people who refuse to see me. I've stopped making myself smaller to fit into spaces I don't belong. I belong here, with her, With the life I built, with the name I signed on that form, hands shaking, heart pounding, completely sure. Sometimes strength looks like shouting. Sometimes it looks like saying one word with everything you have left. Mine. My baby. My name. My story. And this time, no one else gets to tell it for me. If this story touched you, if you've ever felt dismissed, unheard, or underestimated, know that you're not alone. What happened to me in that hospital wasn't just about one moment. It was about reclaiming who I am and refusing to be erased. If you've ever had to fight for your place, I see you. And I hope you found strength in this story the same way I found strength in living it. You felt something while watching? Take a second to like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below and tell me what part hit you hardest. I read every single one. And if you want more real stories that speak from the heart, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And most of all, thank you for believing that every voice matters. I'm Celine. And this was my story.